how tech mistakes in media harm us all. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. This boils down to, I'll call it an important pet peeve of not just myself, but many other folks in the tech industry. And I'll actually generalize to it being a pet peeve of anybody in an industry that has any kind of specialization that gets displayed on popular media like television shows and movies. And that is simply this. If you're going to take away only one thing from this video, let it be this. Don't base your understanding of what's possible or how technology works on television and movies. The important point, they are fiction. Now, some of them try to make things look realistic, but they often take liberties that they believe don't impact their story. And in fact, liberties that if they didn't take, the reality could potentially negatively impact their storytelling. I get that. But it's not the case that it's necessarily not harmful. And that's because, and this is what I hear, it sets unrealistic expectations of technology by people who learn about technology from TV and movies. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm talking mostly about contemporary drama, TV shows and movies that are set close to the current date, not science fiction. Science fiction gets to take all the liberties they want because you know it's science fiction. Contemporary dramas, and specifically police procedurals, have a use for more or less current technology. But they also don't want that current technology to get in the way of their story. I totally get that. So let me look at a couple of different things that every time I see them, make me tear my hair out just a little. Number one on the list is the invalid IP address. An IP address, an IPv4 address, you never, rarely, if anything, see IPv6 addresses in TVs or movies, and that's fine. But IPv4 is something most people kind of understand. It's four numbers, each between 0 and 255, separated by dots. So you might see something like 35.81.190.153, the current IP address of askleo.com. The problem is that it's really, really common to see so-called IP addresses flash up on the screen during a TV show or a movie that are invalid. They'll have a number greater than 255 as one of those four numbers. Now, the reason is simple. Whatever you show on the screen, someone's going to poke at it. If you put an email address on the screen, somebody's going to send an email. If you put a domain on the screen, somebody's going to go to that website. If you put an IP address on the screen, somebody's going to try and connect to it. By putting an invalid IP address on the screen, well, they can't. It's not real. It's not a real IP address. But it definitely breaks the believability for people that understand what IP addresses look like. The other one that honestly annoys me perhaps even more because it really sets unrealistic expectations. The scenario is very simple. There's, say, a cop show, and on a surveillance camera, they've captured a photo of an automobile with its license plate, a little blurry, so blurry as to be unreadable. So there's the technician sitting at the computer, and behind them is the detective, and the detective says, enhance the photo. So they do, and it gets better. They enhance it again and again and again until the license plate magically becomes readable, and they can go off and catch their criminal. It doesn't work like that. That is not possible. You cannot add information to a photograph. A photograph has the information it has. You can't enhance something illegible into legibility. Now, there are interesting sort of enhancements happening these days. Using artificial intelligence, there are tools that will basically say, you know what? This looks like someone's hair. I'll make it look like better hair. That's artificial intelligence at work. It's not adding information. It's interpreting the information that's already there in a specific way. When you've got, say, a blurry license plate, yeah, you can maybe think that it says, yes, that looks like a blurry license plate. I'll make it less blurry. But if you can't read the letters and numbers in the license plate, no amount of artificial intelligence, no amount of enhancement is going to make that information appear because it wasn't there in the first place. Locating somebody by their IP address. This one gets frustrating because on one hand, it's theoretically possible to locate someone by their IP address. There are a number of things that have to fall into place, not the least of which is in most countries you need a court order and the police to get involved to make this happen. But I will tell you that it doesn't work nearly as quickly as the police procedurals would have you believe. It's one of those things where, yeah, there is paperwork involved. For a very good reason. You're protecting the privacy of everybody else who isn't a criminal. But that does mean that there are hoops that have to be jumped through to allow someone to determine an actual physical location of an IP address. And to be clear, the physical location of an IP address can change. IP addresses can change. Dynamic IP addresses are typically what get assigned to homes and businesses. That means that the IP address that represents this place today could represent a completely different place tomorrow. The ISP has to get involved to correlate those two things, assuming they have records. Most do, but they're not required to. The ISPs don't provide that information without just cause. Hence, the need for things like a court order or a judge signing off on something. Hence, it takes time. It's not something where you can sit at a console and say, oh, look, here's an IP address, click, click, click on the keyboard, and all of a sudden, we know where it is. Does not work like that. Speaking of click, click, clicking on the keyboard, watch their fingers sometimes as they're typing. This is another one of those things that maybe I look too closely, but I've seen actors simply waving their fingers over a keyboard and the sound of keystrokes has been added in post. The stuff that they're typing is added in post, is added on the screen. It's kind of frustrating. If you're an actor, if you're in this role, please type something on the keyboard. It doesn't have to be what's supposed to be getting typed. At least type something. Make it look like you're typing and use the backspace key. Real people make mistakes. Real people use the backspace key often. If I see somebody just sort of typing a mile a minute and never hitting backspace, again, I know it's not real. Another thing to watch for, decryption and data recovery. It's very common in a police procedural to have, say, a hard disk or a computer removed from a hard disk removed from a computer or a computer itself be encrypted. And they will magically then take that hard disk and give it to their technician in the lab. And the technician will eventually decrypt the hard disk and all of the information will be available. It doesn't work like that. Good encryption would take years to decrypt. Makes for a very boring TV show. Good encryption is exactly trying to prevent this scenario. And it does. You can't break into a drive or file that's been encrypted using proper encryption that quickly. Now, I'll admit, not all criminals are the sharpest. So they may be making mistakes, and that's great. But then let's have the shows indicate that, yeah, you know, they used this old outdated encryption algorithm, or they left the key somewhere, or any number of things. But just to magically be able to decrypt a well-encrypted drive quickly, within a day or an hour, no, that's not going to happen. Same thing, by the way, with repairing a drive. You'll often see damaged drives on TV shows. And the drives are often so physically damaged that you know there's nothing that's coming off of it. Certainly nothing that's coming off of it quickly. And yet, magically, before the next commercial break, they've got the data. Another one that that catches me every time. I see this mostly in movies, of all things. They need to enter a keypad code to open a door. So they'll bring out some kind of hardware that they somehow connect to the keypad, and it will start brute forcing the password or the key code or the whatever. And you'll see one character appear, and then the rest will continue to churn. Then the next character will appear, and then the next character will appear. That's not how it works. Passwords and key codes are all or nothing. You don't get them better. You don't get them incrementally. You don't get a character and then have less to work on, and then get a character and have a little bit more to work on. Again, it just doesn't work like that. It's all or nothing. Now, if they were to say, sort of magically have the characters randomly changing, and then all of a sudden all of them appeared at the same time, that would be at least a little bit more believable. But once again, brute forcing passwords is difficult and time consuming if the password is long enough. Now, as we know, as we've heard, 8-character passwords can be decrypted usually within about an hour just by trying all possibilities if you know the encryption algorithm that was used. Same, I would suppose, for keypads. If they don't have some kind of a brute force protection that, say, stops after 3 failed attempts, then yeah, you could probably do those keypads by trying all the 4 or 6 character combinations of whatever they happen to use on their keypad. But it's not going to be incremental. It's going to be all or nothing. So I've complained a lot about all of the different things that basically break believability for me in tech when it's displayed on TV and movies. And more importantly, sets unrealistic expectations of passwords being able to be hacked quickly, drives being able to be recovered successfully, encryption being able to be broken easily. None of that is real. None of that can happen as quickly as it's portrayed on TV. Is there an example of a show done right? Yes, as it turns out, there is. In fact, there are, I'll say, several. The one that comes to mind and the one that impressed the heck out of me as I was watching it was a show called Mr. Robot. It's a TV show. It's basically about technology. But they went the extra mile and made the technology believable. They did the right things. They didn't use technology in ways that it can't actually be used. So if you're looking for a show that actually does things right and actually tells a compelling story, that's one that might be worth at least looking into as an example of things done right. Now, whenever I talk about how you can't do this, you can't break that encryption, you can't uncover that hard drive, you know, all those kinds of things, I immediately get a lot of pushback from folks who say that, well, you don't know what the NSA has. Okay, I'll grant you that. I don't know what the NSA has. I don't know what government agencies have. It's safe to assume they've got the best of whatever is currently possible. But we also understand the encryption algorithms involved. We also understand how passwords are implemented. We also understand how these things work. And that means that we also understand what is and is not possible. Yes, the NSA may have the best technology, but that doesn't mean they have infinite technology. It doesn't mean that they can do anything. It means that they can probably do more than you or I. But it doesn't mean that they can break good encryption easily. It doesn't mean that they can recover unrecoverable hard drives. It just means that they have more than we do. They might be able to do a little bit more than we can. More than anything, I think that the important thing to realize about the real world is that criminals typically aren't that sharp. They're more likely to make mistakes. And it's those mistakes that law enforcement, be it the local cops or the NSA or whomever, can then leverage to make things happen. But doing magic hand-wavy things like you see on TV, no, it just doesn't work that way. For comments, for updates, for related links and more, visit askleo.com/148513. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.